Bom dia a todos. Estou muito feliz por estar aqui. Graças aos organizadores por me convidar. Mas agora vou falar inglês porque não sei como dizer quantum em português. Switch in English. Okay. So yeah, I'll talk about post-quantum crypto and quantum stuff. Just to warn you, these are very low-tech slides. You can notice the handwritten stuff. I have very bad handwriting. I try to do my best. And I use my my 6-year-old daughter's drawing application on her iPad and a stupid pencil to draw everything. So it might look a bit weird, but it's just different. Okay. So to start the talk, I was looking for pictures of quantum computers. So I used Google and stuff, and I looked for free or right images. And I Googled quantum computer pictures, and I found this. So obviously, these aren't quantum computers. It's the same kind of computers you have. So I kept searching for quantum computers, and then I found this. Do you know what it is? No. It's a quantum scalar pendant energy card. Listen, it reduces inflammation, it promotes unclamping of cells, and it protects your DNA from damage, whatever that means. And of course, it fights cancer cells, it increases energy, and so on, so on, so on, and it improves blood circulation. You can find it on Alibaba. I don't know if they have any left. It's pretty expensive, but come on, it's pretty powerful. There's just one thing that it doesn't do. If you check this list, it doesn't break any cryptography. So it's kind of useless. An actual quantum computer would maybe look like this big fish, whereas the cryptography we use today would be the small fish. So the purpose of this keynote talk, which is the first keynote I give in my life ever, is to explain you why this big guy would be able to eat the small guy and how the small guy could defend itself against the big fish. So I won't enter into all the details of explaining how quantum physics work and the Heisenberg equations and all this complex stuff, but just try to give you some very basics of the principles behind a quantum computer and try to convince you that it's not that complicated. It's just very basic mathematics. So, whereas a normal computer works with bits, a bit is either 1 or 0. Quantum computers, they work with quantum bits, that we call qubits, like this. So we use some scary notation like this alpha times this 0 qubit plus beta times 1. This is just notations. We use alpha and beta, but I could have used A and B, X and Y, whatever. But the point is that a qubit is characterized by two numbers, alpha and beta. And they're not real numbers, they're complex numbers. So of the form, for example, A plus BI, where I is the imaginary unit. And these two numbers, they're called amplitudes. And amplitudes are a bit like quantum probabilities, if you will. What does it mean is that if you observe a qubit, so let's say this is a qubit, I've never looked at it, I prepared it in my lab, and it's characterized by two values, alpha and beta. And then I look on my qubit. And then it's either 1 or 0. I will observe it equal to 0 with probability alpha square, and I will observe it being equal to 1 with probability beta square. So obviously, alpha square plus beta square must be equal to 1. And once I've observed it being 0 or 1, then it stays 0 or 1 forever. It doesn't change anymore. So the initial state is called superposition, which is kind of 0 at 1 at the same time, but it's a bit more complicated. Like you see in this comic, they say, okay, superposition, it doesn't really mean 0 and 1 at the same time. It's something more complex mathematically. You can see it as a linear combination of stuff. But the bottom line is that you can directly explain it using concepts that we're familiar with. It's quantum, it's magic, it's complicated. Now, how to compute with this kind of thing? So on a classical computer, we have, for example, a logic gate, a negation, a 0 comes in, and a 1 comes out. Okay, stupid, you have one number in, one number out. With a qubit, remember that qubit is characterized by two numbers. So let's say we take the qubit 0, which is 0 with probability 1. So you know in advance that it will always be 0. And it's equal to 1 with probability 0, of course. And then you apply this quantum gate, and you end up with two different numbers. So in this case, 1 over square root of 2 and 1 over square root of 2. It means that if you observe it this time, then it will be equal to 1 with probability 1 over square root of 2 squared, which is 1 over 2. And likewise, it will be 0 with probably 1 over 2. Okay. But the big observation is that here you have two numbers to remember instead of just one. Now what happens if you have two objects? So 2 bits, let's say you have 2 bits here, 2 numbers, and there's, for example, 1 bit comes out. If you have 2 qubits, for example, 0 and 1, so 2 qubits, it can take 4 values. It can take the value 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1. So each of these 4 values is characterized by a probability. So in this case, we always have 1 here, always 0 there. So this value has probability 1. And then you can apply some quantum gates, for example, the swap gates, which will just swap the values of qubits, and you will end up with 1, 0 instead of 0, 1. But again, the point is that we have 4 numbers to remember if we deal with 2 qubits. Now you see where I'm going if we generalize this to a larger number of qubits. But what's also important to see is that this quantum gate, it's actually of size 4 by 4, because you can see any quantum gate like a matrix, like you saw in high school math, because a quantum gate is nothing more than linear algebra operations. If you were to simulate a quantum computer, you would just need vector matrix multiplications. So the result here is this vector multiplied by the matrix representing this gate. So the upshot is that any quantum circuit can be simulated by linear algebra operations, which are just vector matrix multiplications. But the point is that the matrix will become bigger and bigger as the number of qubits grow. And if you have n qubits, so my state will be characterized, if I want to simulate it, by 2 to the n numbers. And the gate will be 2 times n numbers. So you see that it's relatively practical if you have maybe 10 or up to 20 qubits. But if you have 50 or hundreds of qubits, then obviously 2 to the 50 or 2 to the 100, it becomes very large and unmanageable. Whereas if you had a quantum computer, you wouldn't have to remember all these numbers. These numbers would be implicit in the object. You would have only one stupid qubit here, only one object, but this object, because of quantum mechanics, would be kind of the encoding of many numbers. Okay, so that was for the theoretical part. So now the reason why I'm here today is that this kind of crazy computer could solve some problems much faster than any classical computer can do. In the sense that in terms of theoretical complexity, you would have a clear speedup. For example, a problem that could be solved classically in at least 2 to the n over 2 operations might be with a quantum computer in this complexity O to the n in a linear time, which means, if you will, exponential usually means impossible, and polynomial or linear usually means practical in practice. So this kind of speedup is what we call an exponential speedup. You go from exponential to sub-exponential. An exponential speedup, in practice, it means going from the impossible to possible. So that's kind of interesting property. Instead of just using approximation algorithms for problems that you can solve, then you might be able to solve these problems if you had a quantum computer. Okay. Now, instead of explaining what is a quantum computer, let me briefly highlight 3 points about what a quantum computer is not. So it's not a super fast computer. So many people come to me and say, but quantum computer, it would be billions of times faster. I say, no, wait. Sorry, but it would likely be slower in terms of latency, in terms of gates. Instead of being like 3 gigahertz, it might be much slower than this. So it's not a faster computer. Sometimes journalists or people think that it's something that computes all the answers in parallel simultaneously and picks the best one. So, sorry, it doesn't work like this again. There's something called quantum parallelism, but it's a more complex notion. You cannot compute all the solutions in parallel and then pick the best. It's many very different from this. And maybe last but not least, it's not something that would solve NP-hard problems. So NP-hard problems is typically the kind of problems that have exponential time complexity, for which you can verify the correctness of a solution, but for which finding the solution is extremely hard. Okay. So in terms of complexity theory, I don't know if you've studied this or if you're familiar with notions like P and P, but I can summarize it very simply like this. So we have the class of NP-complete problems here, which is the smallest class of hard problems. So NP hard problems are at least as hard as NP-complete. So these are hard, whether you have a quantum computer or not. BPP is a bounded error polynomial time, probabilistic polynomial time complexity, is the kind of problems that you can solve efficiently on a classical computer like this one. And BQP is the equivalent of BPP, but for quantum computers. So the kind of problems that a quantum computer could solve efficiently. Now you see that this bubble is bigger than this one, which means that there are some problems that can be solved efficiently by quantum computers, but not by classical computers. Another important point about what quantum computer is not, there's not this. Maybe you heard about the company D-Wave. They have very good marketing material. They have a very nice website. They do very interesting research, by the way, but they don't do full-fledged quantum computers. They try to use quantum phenomena to do some dedicated circuits, like something a bit similar to ASICs, but using quantum stuff. And they even call them quantum computers, but these aren't quantum computers. And they would not be able to do this, to implement Shor's algorithm. Shor's algorithm is maybe the single reason why people care about quantum computer at all. It's the algorithm that would allow you to go from n equal pq to the factors p and q. So you probably know the implication of this. If you can factor big numbers, then you can break RSA. Sure, we will also be able to solve this problem, which is a bit less straightforward. Is the discrete logarithm problem. So here you know x, you know p, you don't know d, you want to find d. And if you find d, then you solve the problem. And if you can solve this problem, you can break any Diffie-Hellman operation, including elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman, which means you can break any SSH connection, any TLS connection, which obviously is not what you want. So on a classical computer, doing this would take exponential time complexity. Approximately, it would be practically impossible. With Shor's algorithm, you would go from exponential complexity down to cubic complexity, which means, in principle, practical. Okay, so RSA is dead, Diffie-Hellman is dead, ECC is dead. Wait, what do we do now? Do we wait till so then people start panicking. Oh, we should switch to post-quantum crypto, blah, 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 blah. Just small warning, it's not that bad. Well, from the information we have today, some researchers try to estimate how costly it would be to actually break RSA or ECC. And they came up with this kind of conclusion that to factor a 1K RSA modulus, it would take approximately 1.5 million qubits. So you're like, okay, wait, why breaking something with 1,000 bits would take 1 million qubits? So the main reason is that quantum computers, they're very unstable devices. There's a lot of error interference coming from the environment and within the qubits themselves. So you need many more qubits to correct the errors that happen inside your quantum computer. So there are some theoretical theorems that tell you that you can always correct up to a certain amount of errors, but it means that you also need many more qubits. And then in terms of latency, in terms of time, they estimated, so again, based on the information they use available today, that to factor a 2K RSA modulus, so now the RSA you use today, it's at least 2048. It would take approximately 5 months, so of this order of magnitude. It would not be like, wait 1 second and factor it. So it wouldn't be that easy. Okay, so how far are we from achieving this? Okay, let me just doing. It's a logarithmic scale. So today, the best quantum computers we have are circuits that compute some stuff using quantum circuits. We have between 10 and 20 qubits, depending on how you count it. So if you read the news, you have the guys of Google and IBM, which are a bit competing with each other, telling you that they will have 40 or 50 qubit systems by the end of the year. But then they tell you well, maybe they will not work, but we'll try to have 50 qubits just for PR and stuff. Well, anyway, this is where we are today. And the best factorization result is that we know how to factor 15. So spoiler, 15 equals 3 times 5. And this is of the order of 1,000 bits. Is the size of an RSA modulus, or the size of the Diffie-Hellman multiplicative group that we try to break. And this is the order of magnitude of the number of qubits that we would need. So here we are, and that's the number of qubits we need. So how many years? So the people who are trying to sell you post-quantum crypto will tell you, 5 years, buy your stuff, because in 2 weeks we'll have quantum computers. And then you have researchers who want funding to work on quantum stuff, and they also tell you, maybe in 10 years. No, we need money to work to do research. And then you go talk to the very same guy, and behind closed doors they will tell you, I will never see a quantum computer in my lifetime, but true story. So and another important algorithm is called Grover, from the guy who invented it. It's also called quantum search. So in this case, you don't get an exponential speedup. You do get a quantum speedup, but just a quadratic speedup. So you go from complexity O to the n, O to the square root of n. So what's going on here? You have a table of values that are not sorted, and you want to search for one specific value. So in a classical machine, there's no way to cheat. You need complexity that is proportional to the size of the array. On a quantum machine, you would take theoretical complexity that would be proportional to the square root of the size of the array. So again, there's some caveats because there's constant factors hidden in the big O notation. But the upshot is that if you have a symmetric key of n bits, then security would be reduced to approximately n over 2 bits. So if you use AES with 128 bits, you will conclude that you will only get 64-bit security. So then, you want to read the fine print and see what it really means in practice. So people try to do the exercise and estimate how slow it would be, how big would such a quantum circuit be. And they came up with this figure of a circuit of size 2 to the 80 gates. What does that mean? So I tried to count, even if each quantum gate is as small as an atom of hydrogen, which is 12 picometers. So then this size is the diameter of the solar system. And then you're like, but there will be some improvement. They will make it much smaller. So maybe they will end up with something just the size of the moon, maybe, which is much smaller than this. But it would still be, pretty large. It would not fit in this room, obviously. So anyway, even if, you're scared about quantum computers, here the solution is straightforward. You just double the key size, and you use AES 256, and then you get 128-bit security. Okay, now let's switch to the future post-quantum. That's how it looks on this company's page. How much time do I have? Okay, plenty of time. So you may know that post-quantum means an algorithm that will not be broken by a quantum computer. So obviously, it should not rely on factorization or discrete log, which means, theoretically speaking, that it should be the problem of cracking this cipher should be outside of this class that we call BQP. So RSA is not post-quantum, but AES is post-quantum because we only get a quadratic speedup. We're still in the exponential complexity domain. So now it's not, people will tell you, okay, you want to switch post-quantum because we'll have quantum computer in 10 years. And some people who have the other binary view, they say, no, you should not care about it because it will never exist. That's my opinion. So these are people's opinion. Now to be more rational and to think about this in a non-binary way, my point of view is that I see it as an insurance. In insurance, like you pay insurance for flooding or natural disasters against a very unlikely event. And that's kind of risk management. If you're a CISO, you have some budget to spend. How should you prioritize this in terms of investment if you have other stuff to protect? I often say that this should not be a priority, but if you have money left, that's the kind of insurance that you may want to buy, depending on what is offered to you. But it's not binary. Anyway, why should we care about this from a pragmatic point of view. The main reason why you hear about quantum and post-quantum stuff in the news, especially these days, is that these guys, NSA, well, you don't need to introduce NSA, in August 2015, they co-published a memo recommending that US federal agencies switch to post-quantum crypto in a near future. I don't remember what kind of term they use exactly. They alert developers and operators of the need to transition to quantum-resistant algorithms in the future, whatever that means. But if you've worked in the public sector and administration in your country's administration, you know that to make things change, it takes a lot of time. There's a lot of inertia and latency. So in a country like the US, it might take 30 years to switch all the systems from pre-quantum to post-quantum. So that may be one of the reasons why they said this. And of course, you have some, conspiracy theorists who were like, so they have a quantum computer in their basement and they want to, to protect themselves and blah, blah, blah. There's many theories, but my personal opinion is that it just, from their point of view, it's still an insurance. They know that the Chinese are also investing in quantum computing, so they want to make sure that on the long term they are protected. So what's the, what does it mean concretely is that we have this project. So NIST is the National Institute of Standard and Technology in the US. So the guys who create the standards and who, in particular, create the crypto standards. So the guys who brought you the AES and SHA-3. So I don't know if you remember, but AES and SHA-3, they were both developed as a kind of public project or public competition where NIST, it's very smart from NIST and from the US in general, because they would publish in like kind of RFP, say, we want new ciphers. And then many cryptographers, many academics, and many Europeans would create new ciphers, would ask public money from the European Union to do research, and for years and years hire postdocs and PhDs and organize workshops and stuff. And they would send their ciphers to NIST, free of rights, or copyright-free, patent-free. And then for 2 or 3 or 4 years, all these researchers, they would, again, spend public money trying to break the ciphers and understand them better and implement them and optimize their implementation. And at the end, NIST picks the one or the ones that they think best suit their requirements. I didn't say the best one, but the ones that they think are the best. And then we have good standard. I think AES is very good cipher. SHA-3, Ketak is very nice. And the irony is that then the Americans get it for free, and then they sell their products back to the Europeans with a new standard that the Europeans developed in the first place. But yeah, I'm digressing. So the upshot is that this kind of project is very fun. I've been involved in those before, and it's kind of demolition derby, because you publish your cipher, and then your incentive is to try to break the other guy's ciphers. So you try to attack them in a variety of ways. You try to find weaknesses. You're trying to create new artificial security notions and claim that their ciphers don't satisfy these security notions. Yeah, a lot of fun. But if you noted the timeline, so it starts, the call for proposals was published last year. The deadline for submissions is end of November. So it's really a timely talk from this point of view. Now you're wondering, okay, what are these submissions? They've not been published yet. They will be published in early December, I guess. There's a few ones that we already know. So I put up this webpage. It's postquantum.ch. It's totally unofficial, not approved by NIST anyway. And there's a few algorithms that have been published already. So 2 of which I co-designed with a master student. And I will talk about this one later. Now, very briefly, there's 5 types of post-quantum crypto. The ones that are based on error correcting codes, so IDs that date back to the late 70s. Hash-based crypto, about the same period, late 70s, early 80s. Lattice-based, it's a bit more recent. It's how to explain this? It's the most mathematical one, if you will. Multivariate crypto is based on the problem of solving nonlinear equations, multivariate equations. And the last one is isogeny-based. It's based on a new kind of problem based on elliptic curves, but that is not the discrete log. That is a bit different. So it looks like it's post-quantum, but people are not totally sure. So maybe these 4 ones are the main ones. So in the few time I have left, I will try to convince you that hash-based crypto is cool and maybe the most secure one, not the most efficient one, but the ones for which we have the best insurance in terms of security. Maybe the interest of hash-based crypto is that you know that it's at least as secure as the hash function behind. So obviously you don't want to use MD5 because MD5 is broken and shouldn't have used this diagram. But yeah, the magic here is that you create public key crypto, so encryption schemes, signature schemes, and maybe Diffie-Hellman. No, well, you only create signature schemes for hash-based. But this will be secure as long as the hash function is secure. And we are very confident that the hash functions we use today, like SHA-3 or Blake2, are secure. So how does it work? So this one is extremely stupid, but it's surprisingly difficult to understand. Well, at least it was for me the first time I saw it. So here, there's something called one-time signature. So you want to sign something in the sense of digital signature. Your secret key will be these two values, K0 and K1. So think of these like 256-bit keys, for example. And the public key is the hash value of K0 and the hash value of K1. So you know that this is the hash of K0, but you don't know K0. And you know that this one is the hash of K1, but again, you don't know K1. So I'm the owner of the secret key, and I want to sign a message. I want to sign a message, so I want to demonstrate to you, who know the public key, that I intended to send this specific message. So my message is, again, very stupid. It's either 0 or 1. So I can only sign 0 or 1, and once. So if I want to sign the message 0, I publish K0. I send you K0. K0 is my signature. And then what do? You take K0, and you hash it, and you verify that it's equal to the hash of K0 that you have. So this way, I prove to you that I own K0, that I own the secret key that corresponds to this public key. So an attacker couldn't switch 0 to 1 and forge the signature of 1 because the attacker would not know K1. So this is stupid, and that is completely useless because you would need as many keys as there are bits, and any key can only be used once. Because once I've published K0 or K1, then an attacker knows K0 or K1. So, okay, what's the point? Now, let's say you want to sign more than 1 bit. You want to sign, let's say, a number between 0 and the value W. So instead of hashing your secret key once, you will hash it many times. You will hash it W times. So I wrote H superscript W of K. And again, K is my secret key, and this guy is my public key, where I've been hashing K and hash the hash of K and hash the hash of the hash of K, and so on and so on. And then the signature of a number X, where X is between 0 and W, between 1 and W, is the hash of K repeated X times. And then if you want to verify that this matches my public key, then you hash this value again, W minus X time, until you go back to the public key. So we're just hashing stuff, and again, here the problem is that you can only use a key once. Okay. So it's normal if you don't understand everything, it's very counterintuitive. But now the problem is that, like I said, you can only use a key once. So how do you solve this problem? So like in many computer science problems, when you're stuck, what do? You use a tree, a binary tree. In this case, we use what is called a Merkle tree. So it sounds fancy, but it's nothing more than a hash tree in the sense that the guy here is the hash value of this and this. So you concatenate these two guys, you hash it, and then this is the hash. And again, this guy is the hash of the concatenation of these two guys. And that's it. So your public key will be the root of the tree. And you want to send a message, and you say, oh, I'm going to use K1 here. So what do? You will publish K1, or you will use K1, and along with your signature, you will publish this guy and this guy, which is called the authentication path. And publishing these two guys will allow the verifier to hash these two, get this one, hash these two, and get back the public key, and verify that the public key that was computed is equal to the public key that they know in the first place. So here I have only 4 values, but in practice, you imagine that you have maybe 50 or 40 or 60 values there and a depth of maybe 40. So if you have a depth of 40, then you will compute 40 hash functions. Now something a bit different. So I've talked about one-time signature, many-time signatures. Now I'll talk about something few-time signatures. It's a bit different now. This is much more recent. The idea is from Resin and Resin in 2002. And the public key, well, the secret key is a bunch of keys, K0, K1 up to key N. And again, the public key is the hash of each of these keys. Now I want to sign a message. I will use a hash function, but that's a little bit different from the hash functions you're used to. My hash function, given a message, it will give me a bunch of numbers. So here it will give me the 2 numbers 1 and n, for instance. So what will I do? I will publish these 2 keys, k1 and kn, because the hash of m is 1 and n. If it were 2 and 3, I would have published k2 and k3. Okay. Then I repeat this for other messages, and the idea is that I will have, as I keep signing messages, I will reveal some keys, but there will still be many keys that have not been published. But obviously, if I keep hashing messages and I get random-looking numbers here, at the end, I will publish all the keys, and it will become insecure, because if I publish all my secret keys, then my secret keys are not secret anymore, and everything becomes useless. So these 3 types of constructions taken individually, they look totally stupid and useless, but if you combine them, if you combine the one-time signature, if you combine the Vintonitz many-time signature with the Merkle tree, and if you add even more trees, and you put your trees in trees and in trees, then you create this. It's Sphinx. So it's a scheme that was created in 2015 by Dan Bernstein, who you may know, and other people. And the idea of this construction was also to eliminate the state in the sense of being stateless. So stateless, as opposed to stateful, means that you don't need to keep track of a counter. The counter would be like, okay, I've used this key, I've used the key number 1, now I want to use the key 2, I've used the key number 2, now I want to use the key number 3. It eliminates this kind of statefulness by randomizing the index of the key. So each time you pick a random key, and because it's random, you're unlikely to pick twice the same key. That's the very general idea. So it looks nice, but there are several problems with string, or maybe several limitations. The first one is that the signatures are pretty big. To get 128-bit security, the signatures could be about 40 kilobytes. And it's relatively slow. But the biggest limitation from my point of view is the complexity. You have 4 types of trees, so you have the big hypertree here, and each node is a tree. So each node of the tree is a tree itself. So at the very root, you have a Merkle tree, and all the leaves of this tree are other types of trees, which are one-time signature schemes, of the Vintonitz type that I mentioned before. And each node here will sign the roots of the tree 1 layer below. And then you have these trees of trees and stuff. And at the very end, the very leaves of the hypertree will be of the horse type, which is the few-time signature scheme I mentioned before. And this is the guy that will actually sign the message that you intend to sign. And when you publish signature, you publish the signature computed with this guy, and then you also publish all the signatures that connect this root here to the root of the hypertree. Well, that's a mess. And we tried to do something simpler, but we ended up doing something that may actually be even more complex. It depends on how you look at it. So that's work I did with a master student of mine this summer, well, the first semester of this year. And our goal was to simplify, to improve things, to make it faster, to make it more secure. And we called our construction Gravity Sphinx. So gravity, why? Because we saw that it was as ambitious as the problem of solving the quantum gravity problem. So it's kind of Sphinx with a bunch of new tricks. And the goal of these tricks is to make signatures shorter and to make the scheme faster or less slow. I will very simply try to present this trick to give you the idea of what what we did. The first one is to use collision-free hashing. So I mentioned in this few times stuff, you pick a bunch of indices, you pick a bunch of numbers. But in Sphinx, if you were to pick, for example, 32 numbers, then it was like each number was a random number. And if each number is random, then it could happen that you get twice the same number, that you get twice the same index. So it meant that you would publish, instead of publishing 2 different secret keys, you would publish only 1. And we realized that this makes the schemes a little less secure. So we came up with a modified version of the hash function that uses a pseudo-random generator, or PRNG, where there is no such collision, where the risk of collision is literally 0. And based on this, we analyzed the security of the scheme, and we wrote new theorems, and we proved that we have this level of security if we have this kind of parameters. Another trick we use is that we try to make it a little bit faster by creating a trade-off between the key size and the amount of computation to do. So instead of, again, I try to simplify it, instead of having trees of trees of trees and stuff, we have a big tree here that we pre-compute, so that when you sign a message, you only have to compute this small tree instead of computing a sequence of trees. So this makes the key a little bit bigger, but this saves you a lot of computations at the end of the day. Another trick that we used was batching. So let's say you want to sign many messages at the same time. Let's say you want to publish new Linux packages and you want to sign everything. And instead of computing one signature for each package, you want to publish one single signature for the list of packages. So to simplify again, we would take all the messages, we would put them in a tree. So again, we solve the problem by using a tree. And then we just sign the root of this tree. So now if you want to publish the signature of one of these guys, instead of publishing all the messages, you publish the message and the authentication path, so a bunch of nodes within this tree. So again, we put a tree in a signature scheme that you have, where you have trees of trees and trees. Okay. So the internals are pretty complex, so I don't want to bore you with all of this. It already starts to be pretty boring. But the bottom line is that we end up with this kind of parameters. So some versions that we intended to submit to NIST, maybe the final versions will be a little bit different. So we have key size of between 20K and 34, 35K approximately. So it's still pretty big. You might argue that it's not realistic. Well, I have maybe like, I don't know, half a terabyte of memory on this guy. But obviously, if you're on very low-end devices, if you're IoT stuff and you have very limited memory, you won't be able to store thousands of signatures. But I think it would fit many use cases in terms of key size, of signature size, sorry. The keys, on the other hand, they can be pretty small. The public keys, they're 32 bytes only. And the secret keys are 64 bytes plus the cache if you use the cache. Okay. So you see that this post-quantum stuff, it's pretty complicated. That's just one type of scheme, hash-based. The other ones, lattice-based, code-based, multivariate, they're totally different from this. And they're not much simpler. So the project of NIST will take, I think, at least 4 or 5 years, because we need to better understand this kind of construction, and we need to be sure that they are secure enough to be a standard. So, like I said, the deadline is 31st of November, and in what's the date? In April 2018, NIST will organize a workshop where all submitters will come to the stage and present their submission. And co-located with this event, there will be a PQ Crypto 2018, which is the latest conference about post-quantum crypto. So it's been running since 2010 or 7, I don't remember exactly. But it's the main conference about, if you're interested in post-quantum crypto, that's where the best research is published. It's a nice location. It's in Miami, Florida. So I hope I will go there. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I had to say today. So thank you for coming. I will happily take any question. That's my contact. And a very small commercial plug. I just wrote a book, and it will be published in the coming days. It will be available in Amazon on November 21st. So if you're interested in crypto, then you may consider this. Thank you. Question. So everybody understood the hash-based crypto,
Yeah,
which is good.
That's good. So buy his book. I already did. I had the early access. So
yeah, I wanted to bring
really
lots
good.
of it, but I didn't get any time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Oh, there's a question. There's a question.
Yeah.
You spoke there about introducing a work factor to hashing.
Yeah.
Isn't that what the current password hashing algorithms already do?
Yeah, so the question is about work factors in hash functions. So here, we don't explicitly want to introduce a work factor because a work factor makes hashing slower and using more memory. So that's what you want to have in password hashing. But here we would like to avoid this work factor to be as fast as possible. So we don't put the extra work on purpose. We try to minimize it. So this can be used, this cannot be used for hashing passwords, for example.
Thanks. More questions? No. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, JP.